annotation. Okay, so today, which is very important stuff, stereotypes. So we have given few annotations given to understand IOC container in the automatic object creation. Okay, IOC container is having component scan capability. IOC is having one capability like object creation dependency injection, right? It is having component scan capability. Using this component scan, what it can do, component scan can able to create objects of your class from the given package. IOC container, using this component scan feature, it can able to create objects to your class from the given package name, or expression. Via name or expression, package name if you pass, expression is nothing but something like star. If you can put base package name dot star, it can go to depth into all the packages and it can able to scan your classes. But here is one condition, it can able to create objects of your classes. We have one condition here, which class objects it can create. If you annotate your classes with stereotypes, then only it can able to create. So you need to mention stereotype annotation on your class. So what are all these stereotypes? Which annotations are available, sir? So the list of annotations which are available, one is controller, and we have one @REST controller. In REST implementation we use this REST controller, and we have service, and we have repository, and we have REST repository, component configuration, and here this one we will use along with @bin, which is very important for configurations purpose. We use this. So such many annotations we have. So where do we need to use these annotations? On top of your class. On top of your class you need to mention them. So purpose of each annotation, where do I need to configure controller? In your MVC you need to use this on controller part. While you are implementing your MVC based application, for controller we use this annotation. Same thing, REST controller also. For controller only, but for REST based applications. Service we do use for model. In model we know that business and DAO classes we write. So for this business class we use service annotation. For the business class in model we have business and DAO classes, right? So for your business class you do use @service annotation. And the same way a repository we use for DAO. DAO class. And REST repository also we do use for DAO class only. REST repository we do use for DAO class to make your class itself as a REST class repository itself. So which is very interesting. We will see. Component we have. So in your application, along with this business DAO classes, controller view classes, we have some utilities also. We have some utilities also apart from these classes, right? We can have utils. We can have utilities, file utilities, or you may have exception utilities classes. You may have validation utilities classes, validations, file handlings, whichever you call. For them we use, for such classes we use component annotation. And what about this configuration with the bean annotation? This configuration with the bean annotation we can use same for not for utilities, configurations. Apart from your MVC business classes, DAO controller classes, we will have configurations also. What are they? Which type of configurations? Connection pool configurations, or you may call it data source. Data source configurations you may need to do sometimes. REST template configurations you may need to do sometimes. Your JMS configurations like Kafka, message queues. If you want to initialize something, if you want to initialize something, if you want to create object for connection pools or REST templates, anything you call it, which is configuration apart from your model view controller classes. Sir, for controllers given, and for business classes given, for DO classes, for utilities also we have annotations. When it comes to configuration with @bean, where exactly we use means under configurations. At the time of application startup, you may need to be initialized connection pools, some stuff which is useful around the application, right? Configuration stuff. All that configuration we do under @configuration class, which is very important, annotation, and we do use with the @bean configuration. I'll explain you very in detail why we need to use configuration with @bean combination. Okay, mostly this @bean and configuration annotation, you can imagine like we are going towards XML to annotations approach. We are avoiding XML. Okay, so when we avoid XML, there are still few beans, sir, that I need to create. You said avoid the XML file, as we are using these annotations across MVC. I have some configurations, sir. Where do I need to do? We avoided XML files, so connection configurations, such all I want to do. They are not simple MVC classes, they are configurations. Where shall I do means you need to use @configuration annotation. Under that you need to use @bean method. There we do configure them. Okay, we'll see it, okay, in detail. I'll show you example. Okay, we will create one more example. Let's use Eclipse. stereotype example project which is part of advanced Spring. Okay, so we are using these annotations. Okay, these annotations in boot microservices applications, which are very important. Okay, try to understand them, how useful they are. Okay, application is created. Now let's add some classes here. And try to understand how useful it is. Com dot rbu dot employee management system. Okay, let me make it web. So I'll create few packages. Web package for controller. I'll create a service package for service class, DAO for repositories, util package for utility classes, and config package for configuration classes. So these many varieties you may see. Okay, variety of packages like web for your controllers, service for your DAO service classes, DAO for DAO, config for configuration, util for your utility classes, which are validations, something like that. So in web class I'll create a simple, in web package I'll say create a simple class employee controller. So if it is a REST based application, you can use @REST controller. If it is a simple web application, you go with controller. We'll do end-to-end operation. Okay, system.out.println employee controller object created, and service DAO employee repo or DAO class @repository. And configuration. Remember, in configuration we will do application configurations. If any configurations required for your application, @configuration class, and we do use @bean method here. Sir, throughout my application I have some validities, or I have some utilities, or so I have to use some connection pool connections I want to use, sir. Where should I create? I want to create connections, sir. Connection I want to use across multiple DAO classes. Where should I create? You can use @bean method. Whichever you want, or inject everywhere. Sir, into this DAO class I want to inject one connection object. Private connection. Sir, connection I want to put as a dependency, sir. So this dependency I want to inject not only employee repository, I have payroll repository, other repository classes also. Whichever single connection I created, I want to inject, sir. I want to inject that into this repository connection object. but I don't want to create connection object every time. I just want to create one time. So you go to bean method, which will execute only one time. So this bean will give you comfort here to create a method, create connection. You can create connection here and you can return that connection. Try catch. You may put logic here, class dot for name, Oracle dot jdbc dot Oracle driver, just creating a connection here, Oracle dot jdbc dot Oracle driver. Then you can get a connection here, driver manager dot get connection, jdbc colon Oracle colon, then colon @ localhost 1521 colon exe, username password. Return con. So whichever object you want to create and auto wire, I mean inject, you need to put that as a return type here for your method, and you can return it finally. So I am returning connection here. So if not created connection, it will create null. So @bean method will execute along with your configuration class. By default executes this method. IOC executes this method and keep this object into IOC context. It will keep your object into IOC context only. It will keep along with IOC only, this object also. It will execute @bean method. It will execute. You can customize your code here. Whatever you have, you can put here. Once you return something, right, that object IOC will keep along with it, because you mentioned @bean here. IOC will consider, okay, developer is saying execute this method, take the return type and keep it with me. So IOC will keep it with it, your connection object. IOC will hold it. So for what purpose it will hold, sir? See, I want to use the same connection object in DAO class. Now I want to inject here. For that purpose it will use it. Sir, earlier injection was happening through XML file, so we were using property tag and injecting, right? Property name, connection, and the reference we used to give whichever object we created. The bean which we created here don't have any reference. Still I don't have any XML file to do this stuff. You are saying all these objects are automatically creating. How I can handle this dependency injection? In that case, I will use auto-wired annotation. When I use auto-wired annotation, dependency injection will happen automatically. Dependency injection will happen automatically by IOC. You need not to bother about auto wiring while using the stereotypes, right? On whichever property you mention auto wired, IOC container will check whether this auto wired object is available with me or not. In your configuration class, you created that connection object using @bean. So obviously this object will be available to IOC. So wherever you ask, it can auto wire. Okay, do I need to create all required auto wire object from configuration only? Not really. So as this is a configuration that I need to create here. Apart from configuration, your repository class, I want to inject this repository class, sir. This is a dependency in service. How do I auto wire here? Same way, employee repo, your repo object you can auto wire. Sir, this service I need in controller, sir. from controller only I'm calling service methods. How do I auto-wire here? You can auto-wire service also here. Your service class also you can auto-wire. Now they are connected. Controller connected with the service class via auto-wiring. Service class connected with the repository class. Now your repository class connected with connection, which is created in @bin. So now all are connected. Now if you perform any view operations, if you submit any data now from your view, controller is ready to take, and controller can send it to service. Service is ready to take from controller. Finally DAO can accept your data, and that data you can persist in your tables. This is a basic skeleton for any application which I have given. That is the basic skeleton for any application. So view to controller, when you submit data, controller needs the service object, service needs DAO object, and this DAO needs some connection or connection pool objects, which are configuration specially. So the dependency injection will happen this way. Component scan will create this connection pool object or connection object, which will inject into your DAO. DAO objects will be injected into service objects into controller. All this dependency injection will be performed via, all this DA will be performed via auto wiring. Auto wiring will take care of this dependency injection. So along with stereotypes, we are using one more important annotation to connect that classes is auto wired, which is very important. It will help you to connect your classes. Controller connecting with the service class, service connecting with the repo class. Repo is able to connect with your configuration objects. What else we need? Sir, apart from this, I have some utilities, sir. A validation class I am writing just to validate employee name, email, phone number, such stuff. For this such utilities, what I should use? Component. There is one more annotation called component. You can use it here. If you have any utility operations, you can write here. Validation, such stuff. Now okay, let me create some methods here to do CRUD operation. As I am getting connection object, right, I'll write some methods here. Public void save. I'll take ID, some string name. So this is basic skeleton. You can apply for any application. Almost this is how we create them. Maybe front end we don't have now here. If we can have front end, then it will become end-to-end application. Okay, this is almost like end-to-end scenario. So I'll do some save operation here. Already I have connection. Using that connection, I can create a statement. If I want to insert something, or prepared statement dot execute update insert into, we have one table. ID name email address, ID name email address. I have one table. Let me truncate the data. on, we have empty table. So let me insert on the table. Insert into the table name is RBO experts. ID, name, email. And address. So this execute update will insert record. Plus you are done. Finally close your statement. Connection I am not closing, so as it is a simple application, I want to keep this connection live, and maybe you can use that same connection across multiple. Maybe this is not the right way of doing it, getting connection here. Instead of connection we will get connection pool. Okay, but for a simple example I'm going with this connection. Usually we will close connections also. Okay, but which is auto void need across multiple classes. If you close it, it may not available to others. That's why I'm not doing it. Okay, when we use data sets, data source kind of object, you can use connection pool. When you use connection pool, you can obviously return connections. I'll explain you that. Okay, so once it is done, you may put statement insert success. Employee object or employee data inserted successfully. Now from where I need to call this save method, repository will be called from service method. Public void create employee or emp. From here I want to call the method of repository. You can call repo.save. You need to pass same parameters, ID, name, email address. I'll take this inputs from controller. Service will get that inputs from controller. Controller will send to service, service sends to DAO. Maybe a post method you will have here. Controller side, right? You may have a post method. From there I want to call service.create employee bus. Basically this method will get request from front end. There we have request mapping and all, and we give URL to post the data. When you enter this URL from your front end, it would able to get the data here. Okay, so as we don't have any front end now, we will test it from simple main method only. Okay, application context, new class path XML application context, resources slash spring.xml. Sir, you said the application XML is not required. Yeah, XML is not required, but just to scan these packages, right? One component scan we need to configure. That's it. So we will have that component scan XML. In advanced Spring Boot and all, we don't entertain any XMLs. They are really not required. So let's have com.rbu.ems.star. I'm giving simple expression. Okay, We need to use stereotypes here, right? Yeah, this is the right way. Components can com.rbu.employee management system. Dot star means all the packages. It will go inside this package. If it find any sub packages also, right, it will go inside them. One level, two levels, up to 10 or 20 levels. It can go to child, any number of child packages it can have. It can go to each package and can create objects to them. But the only thing is, condition is, your classes need to have stereotype annotations, or your class need to have @bean method, which is very important. Then it can create objects. Now let's load your XML file and try to get your employee controller and try to save a record. Get bean employee controller. I'm asking IOC, give me employee controller object. So it will give you controller object, controller dot post method. I'll give ID, name, email, and address. Now it will insert. When I call this controller, who is giving controller object? Your application context. This is your server, or you may call your container. This container is having all the objects. Which all objects it is having, sir? Your controller, service object, DAO object. In configuration class, whichever @bean method you created, that @bean object, which is controller, connection in our case, and your validation object, utility object, all the objects it will hold. They are available with context. You can call any one of it using getBean. It will give you. So I'm just getting controller object. Via controller I'm sending some ID, name, email, address. Controller going to service. From we are calling service. From service it is going to DAO. In DAO we are using connection, which is autowide again, to create a statement and executing it on the table. So now end-to-end flow is happening here. When I execute it now, obviously this record is going to be inserted on your database. See, all your objects created: employee object, repo object created, service, validation, controller, finally employee data inserted. Go and check. Select star from experts. You have record here, which is just inserted. You can apply this to you can apply the same to same scenario for complete application. Use same annotations, right? Controllers, service, repository annotations, utility annotations, and right, little bit code will change apart from the skeleton, right, whichever we created. Apart from this, you may see few more annotations, 2-3 extra annotations in MVC or Spring Boot. But going forward, I mean, for every module, right, in every module we are going to see these annotations, which are very important. Okay, so these annotations will be used across all the modules while doing Spring JDBC or ORM, Spring MVC or Spring Boot or microservices. Everywhere you use these annotations, which are very, very important. How many annotations? Very few. Just you have controller or REST controller, service for service class, repository for DO class, if you want to make your repository itself as a REST class without any service controllers, REST repository component for validation kind of stuff, configuration with @bean to create your configurations. That's it. If you remember these annotations, and whichever objects you want to auto wire, all these objects are creating automatically, and you can inject them automatically by using auto wiring. Along with auto wiring, we use all these annotations. So it is simplified your role, your job. Earlier I used to configure a lot of XML properties here. Now I don't have all that. Container is doing or taking care of all the objects. It is creating, it is visiting all your packages, it is scanning them, it is creating objects to them, and it is finding which all are dependencies into each class. Automatically that dependencies also it is injecting. So this entire process became like a automated process, like manufacturing a car with robots. The advantage is robots will deliver same quality of the car, and they can work 24/7 without a failure. Just if you install the robots properly, if you fix them, they can automatically manufacture a car. They are not like humans to strike or to resign or to do something. They can work 24/7 and they can deliver the same quality of a car. Similarly, these annotations, right? They work perfectly to create object and do auto wiring, and it is entirely automated. You can have thousands of classes, millions of classes. No worries. IOC will take care. It will create objects of all your classes, and it can identify which dependencies you have. It can do dependency injection as well. Okay, so this is the advanced feature that we use across all the applications. Okay, just you need to remember these few annotations. That's it. Okay, they're very simple. Okay, tomorrow we will see connection pool examples. Okay, so that we can understand the importance of configurations from there. Okay, we'll see what kind of configurations we have, right, for entire applications, like data source configurations. We'll understand more about this data source. Okay, and why we are using @bean method. What if I use a different method or a different combinations? Why people always used to use this @bean under configuration only? Mistakenly, if somebody put it in other classes, what kind of issues may create, right? All the challenges we discuss in the tomorrow session. Okay.